So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to the Synergy North Ford Ridgeway Construction Neighborhood Project meeting. So my name is Amanda Bay, and I am the Communications and PR Coordinator for Synergy North. So we're here to provide you tonight with information about a project happening in your neighborhood. And before we jump into the presentation, I just want to give you a couple quick housekeeping items for everyone that is tuned in. So all attendee microphones and cameras are turned off, but we will be taking questions throughout the duration of the meeting. So feel free to ask any questions that you might have by typing in your question into the question box, and that's located in the top upper right corner of your screen. You don't need to wait until the end of the meeting to ask your question. Our Q&A box will remain open, and we will respond as best as we can and as soon as possible. If you do have a question that's specific to your property, however, we do ask that you either provide us with your information and we'll get in touch, or you wait till the very end and there's going to be some information about how you can get in touch with us directly. This presentation is also being recorded, so it's going to be available on synergynorth.ca under the Neighborhood Notices tab, so you could refer back to it for any sort of future reference. So without further ado, we will get started with the presentation. So first up, we do have Carla Bailey. She's the Vice President of System Planning and Asset Management and Engineering at Synergy North. So I will get her pulled up.
Okay, good evening. So first off, thanks for joining us tonight to talk a little bit more about the project that we're taking on in the Ford Ridgeway area. So next slide, please. So this will give you an overview of the area that we're working on. As the name states, Ford Ridgeway is sort of the center of the project, and the project encompasses between Edward and Ford, Valor Place, and Isabella. So this is a Google Maps image of the area, and what you will notice is that most of the Synergy North poles and wires are located in backyard easements throughout the area. So we'll talk a little bit about how that might affect how we do the work in their area and what changes you might see coming. Next slide. So here we have some of the assets that Synergy North owns in the area. So typical across all of Thunder Bay, we own the meter bases that are on residential homes. We own pad mount transformers that are typically in residential subdivisions green, in commercial subdivisions they're gray. And you'll see there is that sort of smaller gray box there on the left. So that is not owned by Synergy North. That is a communication infrastructure. So typically T-Baytel has their phone lines and internet lines in there. So we won't be changing any of that. You see on the right, that is what our typical hydro pole looks like. On top there, there's a transformer. We affectionately comment that those look a lot like garbage cans, but they are not garbage cans. They're very important and very useful for transforming our voltage to a usable level for our customers. So what you will see in the area is that we will be changing the poles, so putting new poles, new wires, new transformers in this entire area. So what can you expect? So we break up our projects into several different phases. In the first phase, what you see is new poles. We typically either bring in a machine that will dig that hole for us, or we'll suck out the dirt and create a hole. So you'll see the poles go in, and they'll be just poles for a period of time. And we'll put dirt around them. You'll see the dirt will go up beyond the ground line level. And that's on purpose because it does settle eventually because of the air gaps in the dirt. We often use cranes in easement areas, and so they will lift the poles over top of the homes. Don't be afraid. We use accredited contractors for that and accredited cranes, and we do follow Ontario health and safety guidelines to make sure that we are doing that all safely. You will, however, see again two poles side by side, and we will be removing those poles later on. So the only outage that you will experience is during the time that we change the service that goes directly into your home. So we don't need to have an outage when we set the poles or typically put up the new wire. It's when we transfer your service from the old pole onto the new pole. And again, with traffic disruptions, if we do have cranes in the area, they usually take up just one side of the street, and they'll have traffic protection plans to make sure that the flow of traffic continues throughout the street. So our crews do operate typically between 8 and 4, and again, follow the Health and Safety Act. But please do slow down around our construction practices because it does help our workers perform their work safely.
Hi.
And I'm going to pass this on to Hunter, and you'll see his lovely face on the screen now instead of mine.
Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Hunter Carroll. I'm a lines technician with Synergy North, and I'm here just to explain some of the forestry practices and what you can expect to see as we prepare for the project. So notices will be sent to all customers prior to trimming. You'll receive an automated phone message. So if your phone number has changed recently, it'd be a good idea to update it on your Synergy North account so you can receive that message. Customers with specific concerns about tree trimming are encouraged to reach out to us to discuss individual options on a case-by-case basis. Trimming. So first, our line techs will go into the project and identify areas where tree work is required. We take notes with details like scope of work and access, and then these notes are passed along to our contractor crews who will complete the work. We will reach out to customers who require tree trimming, and if an individual has more specific concerns, we can schedule a site visit at that time. Once our contractor crews begin work, you can expect to see vegetation cleared up to 3 meters or 10 feet from power lines. And we expect to begin our vegetation maintenance in the project near the middle to the end of June. All clippings we take will be cleaned and cleared. And I'll go to the next slide, please. So in the future, we encourage customers to plant the right tree in the right place. Within 15 feet of overhead lines is a good place to plant shrubs or hedges. Around 25 feet, slower growing, smaller species are suitable. These would be like your apples or your cherry trees. And beyond that 25 feet from overhead lines is where larger species can be planted safely. So these would be your spruce, pine, fir, and your larger hardwoods like maple.
Sorry about that. There's got to be at least one person on every meeting that forgets to turn off their mute, and that was me tonight. So continuing on, thanks, Hunter, for running us through the forestry. This Ford Ridgeway project is part of our long-term capital plans. We'll be converting the voltage in the area and replacing any of the aging infrastructure. And so some of the interesting statistics that we wanted to share with you was that there's approximately 55 customers in this area, and there's 8 commercial services. There's 47 new poles that we'll be putting in. We will be reframing some poles, so where poles have already been replaced in the last 10 years, we do reutilize them rather than replacing them. And there's approximately 3,800 meters of new overhead wire, 14 overhead transformers, the ones that I again affectionately called garbage cans, and then 8 of those pad mounted transformers. So the total project cost, which includes all of our equipment, labor, trucking, and of course material, will be $1.4 million. So in our typical design practices, to reduce the disruption on customers, we plan and design our projects in a like-for-like manner. And what that means is most of the time where you see a pole, another pole will replace it. But we do sometimes have to remove any safety hazards that exist or upgrade things to current standards. And so that might be the case where you'll see changes where wire connects to the home. So I'm going to run through the changes that you will see from a like-for-like manner. So what you will see different once this project is complete. Next slide. So again, we're still in the Ford Ridgeway area, and these are the extents. I'll go to the next slide. So I'm going to run through the different types of changes here. I've highlighted, and if you're here today and you want to review this again, this map and this presentation will be posted online. And so I'm going through these highlighted different colors, orange, blue, and green, and you'll see that on one PDF with those different colors, and you can understand what that means. So for an explanation, orange is a new pole, anchor, or wire in a location where it did not exist prior. Blue is where we're moving an overhead wire underground, or where there's just a strictly underground replacement, and you'll see there's several of those in this project. And then green is changed to an existing plant, but less than 5 meters. So the first one I'm going to look at here is on the corner of McGregor Place and Ford Street. So you can see that we need to add a new pole at the end of that easement area there. And that's because this red dashed line is underground. And so we need to bring that underground up to a new pole and are unable to do it at that first pole there. So these are the blue changes, as I discussed earlier, and there are 3 of these. So they run along Ford Street, and if you are traveling down there, you know that Hydro One has a transmission line corridor in the same area. And so in order for us to maintain distances between our Synergy North owned wires and their wires, what we've decided to do is move those wires underground. So the crossing from where our line runs all the way up Ford Street over to feed those back easement laneways will now go underground, and you won't see any wires there anymore. So there's 3 of those to each of those laneways. And then similarly, we've got a couple areas where we'll be doing, this isn't a change from overhead to underground. Instead, it's just replacing underground that's already there. So you can see there's several commercial services off Arthur Street that are not serviced off of Arthur, but they're actually serviced off the laneway behind them. So we'll be replacing their electrical feeds to make sure we maintain reliable electrical service. So those are the only changes for what you see right now to what you will see after we are all done. And this is our schedule. So Hunter and his crews will be coming in this spring and cleaning up, making sure that vegetation is managed in and around where we will be working. And then we don't come back until 2026 in order to do our surveying. And when we do that, we want to make sure we survey in order to make sure we're in the correct corridor. So our poles are in exactly the easement areas that are registered for us. And then we put wooden stakes, and often they'll have a little red top that says S&C on the top. And that stake indicates where a new pole or a new anchor will be going. And then you'll see once those stakes are in place, the crews, our line crews, will come and set those poles in May and then complete adding the new wires to those new poles in the summer. Once all our infrastructure is up, we've transferred our service, that's when we notify the other parties that happen to be on our pole. So we're not alone on those hydro poles. Often you'll see T-Baytel, Bell, Rogers have some of their infrastructure on there. So we provide them notification, let them know we're done putting in new poles. It's time for you to transfer your infrastructure from the old pole to the new one. And then only then can we then remove any of the old poles out of the area. So that gives you an overview of what we're changing in our schedule. I'll pass it back to Amanda to talk about when you'll hear from us.
Great. Thank you, Carla. So when you can expect to hear from Synergy North next, after today's meeting, of course. If there's any customers who will have trees directly impacted by the project, like Hunter said, a specific forestry notice will be sent to you about 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, and it will be delivered by phone call or by email or mail. And next, a notice of project will be sent to all customers in the project area, and that happens approximately 3 weeks before construction starts. So you could expect that via regular mail. And finally, if there's any outages, planned outage notices will be delivered. These letters will come via mail, or you'll receive an automated phone call 1 week prior to that planned outage. And again, so if you have any specific questions in regards to your property, please feel free to reach out to our customer service team. I've put the contact information up on the screen for you, and that could also be found on the Synergy North website. This meeting is definitely going to be posted on the synergynorth.ca website, and that's under the community tab under neighborhood notices. So after the meeting, you'll be able to find it there along with the map that we went over tonight. And that basically sums up the meeting tonight. I'm just going to take a couple more minutes here to see if there's any questions. There's that question box up on your screen if you'd like to ask anything of the presenters tonight. Otherwise, that concludes the meeting for this evening. Thank you for joining us, and we're just going to wait a couple more minutes here to see if any questions come in.